Welcome to Community Church's Unitarian Universalist virtual service, where we gather each week beyond our walls in these present unaccustomed times. Community Church seeks to form a community to practice and advance a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice, invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. It is Community Church. Cynthia, will you help us light the chalice? Please join in singing the words possibly in your chat box on A Word You Remember by Bert Brunson.
We light this flame to affirm the light of truth, acknowledge the warmth of love and community, and the fire of hope and commitment.
Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome those who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of justice and elevate compassion to our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of all. We believe you do not have to think alike to love alike. The sermon for today will be presented by congregation member Alicia Cook. Perhaps you read her article in the winter 2018 UU World magazine on the battle for environmental justice and the need to listen to those most affected. Today she speaks to how to be wrong, right things, wrong things, and embracing the uncertainty in between. I am Reverend Jacqueline Luck, a member of this congregation. At this time, our CCUU's Religious Education Director, Cynthia Ramirez, offers her words for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. When some of us think we are winning, we will never stop doing what we are doing, even if it is the wrong thing. I was called to my son's school for him not attending devotion in the mornings. He said, "But Mom, I have been doing that for months now, and many of my teachers saw, and none of them said anything to me." Because no one said anything to you, you think what you were doing is right? Yes, he said. They are the teachers, and they should have said something. What about you? You don't think what you're doing was wrong? It's not a big deal, Mom. It's a small rule. That's where all your problems begin, small. Then we allow them to grow bigger because no one bothered or cared enough to say something. Then we lose control and blame is cast everywhere. Don't wait for life to tell you or show you that what you are doing isn't right. Life has its own painful but incredibly effective ways to get its message across. Because no one bothered to tell you, you are wrong. That doesn't mean it's right. Knowing the difference between right and wrong is power. Doing the right thing increases your power and strengthens your life. Thank you.
We'll sing We Are a Gentle, Angry People. If you have a hymnal, it's 170 by Holly Near.
Gentle, angry people, and we are singing
Our first reading comes from the book of Wikipedia, a select abridged list of common misconceptions. Number 1, Twinkies have a shelf life of approximately 45 days, far shorter than the common myth that Twinkies are edible for decades or longer. They generally remain on a store shelf for only 7 to 10 days. Number 2, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution generally only prevents government restrictions on the freedoms of religion, speech, press, assembly, or petition, not restrictions imposed by private individuals or businesses unless they are acting on behalf of the government. Other laws may restrict the ability of private businesses and individuals to restrict the speech of others. Number 3, the title of Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein actually refers to protagonist Victor Frankenstein, the scientist who created the sapient creature in the novel, not the creature itself, who is never named and is called Frankenstein's monster. However, as later adaptations started to refer to the monster itself as Frankenstein, this usage became well established, and some do not consider it erroneous anymore. Number 4, mice do not have a special appetite for cheese and will eat it only for lack of better options. They actually prefer sweet, sugary foods. And number 5, not all religions teach that there is a God or gods in the Western sense. For example, Buddhism and Jainism do not have a creator God, and Unitarian Universalist has no creed at all.
Ways we can think we are right. Speaking of, I'm not exactly sure how Joys and Sorrows is going to work this morning. I'm hoping that you're able to send us a message of your joy or concern and to be read aloud after we receive it. Either way, a candle will be lit for all the joys and sorrows that are silent within your heart, or if we're able to speak them. I thought I would mention, as we wait to see if anyone can communicate with us, somewhat of a prayer, in that I want to recognize that on any given Sunday within a congregation, there are those who are hurting, those who have had angry words in their family before they came to the service, those who perhaps got a difficult diagnosis and are facing how to deal with that, those who are terrified and upset about the people in this world that are in such difficult straits, those who have lost jobs, those who have COVID. For all of those, we pray healing energy and wholeness. There is suffering all over the earth. There's environmental suffering, which we certainly will be thinking about always. There's suffering in Afghanistan. There's suffering among people all over the world that are hungry, that are thirsty. There's suffering in the wildfires that are in California and elsewhere in the world. And so we hold all of those people and that suffering in our hearts and pray again for healing energy and wholeness. But there is also goodness, there is joy, there is beauty. There are people daring to love. There is hope. There are flowers that are blooming. There is life, even among all that we see on the news that seems so sorrowful. There are tender touches, roses to be smelled. There's, thank goodness, most of us have food on the table, and we should be grateful, and we are, for all that we have. There is goodness, joy, and beauty abounding, and for this we give our thanks. I understand we have gotten some joys and sorrows. If I can read, Cindy, can you read them, or you want to bring it to me? Okay. She says, just a second. So we'll listen to this lovely music that Kelly's. We're on the path.
Hello. We do have some here. The first is from Jim O'Neill. It is a joy to be together virtually and to hope to be present together soon. This is from Howard Milkey. Enjoyed the company of dinners at 6 last evening. Thanks to all who joined. Thankful that our son is feeling healthy despite testing positive for COVID. Oh, no. I hope he gets better soon. And that is it. And I just want to light 2 more candles. One for all the joy or sorrows that have not been shared, and one for the community as we heal, and hopefully we will get together soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, for pulling us out of that. I couldn't have done it from up here. Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. The generosity of members and friends enables the congregation to fulfill its purpose in doing the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can make your donation online at ccuunola.org/stewardship or by texting 504-370-2659 and enter GIVE to be prompted. Of course, you can always mail a check to the church. I'll put a symbolic check in our offering bowl at this time.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, every lesson with a loving mind, and we see our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the ground of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Our second reading comes from the book Almost Everything, Notes on Hope by Anne Lamott. We all know the horror of having been right with a capital R, feeling the surge of a cause, whether in politics or custody disputes. This rightness is so hot and steamy and exciting until the inevitable rug gets pulled out from under us. Then we get to see that we almost never really know what is true, except what everyone else knows, that sometimes we're all really lonely and hollow and stripped down to our most naked human selves. It is the worst thing on earth, this truth, this about how little truth we know. I hate it and resent it. And yet it is where new life rises from. New life is uncomfortable, nubbly. We like soft and warm. Baby blankets are nice. We also like to wear the fleecy cloak we've made for ourselves, the finery of being right. Why would you take off the cloak voluntarily? It's so comfortable and impressive, at least to you. You let it drop or life yanks it off, and when you notice it's gone, it doesn't feel great. You begin to feel the cold, prickly wind, and people can see your veiny ankles. But what comes in is fresh air on our skin, which startles us awake. In 1985, a renowned British musicologist and choral master named Clive Wearing fell ill with a severe virus that attacked his central nervous system. He lived through it and survives today, aged 83, alongside his wife Deborah, who he married the year before he became ill. He has recovered in nearly all ways but one. Because of damage done to his hippocampus, he now suffers from a rare case of near-total amnesia. Although able to recall select details from his life before his illness, including his profound love for Deborah and the ability to still play the piano beautifully, he now has a complete inability to form long-term memories, and a short-term memory lasts anywhere between 7 and 30 seconds. Because of this, Clive's life in a long-term care facility is exceedingly difficult for any of us to comprehend. Every 30 seconds, his brain resets to a blank slate as he believes himself to be newly awoken from a state of unconsciousness, asking why he has not seen a doctor, and, most poignantly, greeting Deborah joyously after what he believes to be a long-term separation, even if she has just left the room for a moment. Provided with a diary, he painstakingly records his thoughts as the day progresses, each line vigorously crossed out to make way for the next one below it just 30 seconds later. I am now, and only now, completely awake for the first time. Now I am really, utterly awake. I am now, finally, completely, superlatively awake for the first time. There are a lot of sermon topics that can be inspired by Clive Wearing. His life raises fascinating questions about the reliability of our own minds and memories, about the nature of consciousness, and, in Deborah's case, the overwhelming combination of love, despair, and sacrifice that we are capable of experiencing. But the reason Clive has been on my mind lately is that diary, that decades-long chronicle of a man affirming over and over again his absolute knowledge of the absolute truth of his new awakeness, and yet each time being so wrong in a way that everyone can see, except himself. We, of course, are the lucky ones, with our minds intact, perfectly functional, perfectly reliable machines. Of course, most of us are smart enough to know that our minds are not always 100% reliable, and that they're capable of forgetting things and playing tricks on us. But those neurological glitches aside, we, and especially we Unitarian Universalists, I think, place great faith in our capacity to reason, to apply experience to our knowledge, and to generally come up with a worldview that is, for all intents and purposes, the correct one. After all, what's the point of being blessed with a big, beautiful brain if you can't use it to pursue truth and be right? There are two things we do not seem to like. We do not like being wrong, and we do not like being uncertain. In fact, several studies, as well as my own experience, and probably yours, show that even a little political disagreement on Facebook can be enough to elevate the heart rate. And as emotions go high, our capacity for reasoning all too often goes low. John Stuart Mill pointed this out way back in 1869 when he wrote, "So long as opinion is strongly rooted in the feelings, it gains rather than loses stability by having a preponderating weight of argument against it. For if it were accepted as a result of argument, the refutation of the argument might shake the solidity of the conviction. But when it rests solely on feeling, the more persuaded adherents are that their feeling must have some deeper ground, which the arguments do not reach." Well, perhaps we could avoid this emotional attachment to our opinions if we could truly be honest about the fact that we don't always know what the right answer is. But here's what we don't like about uncertainty. It's way too much work, and it doesn't always make for very shareable memes on Twitter. Abolish capitalism. Simple, catchy, only one action step. Abolish capitalism, but in very small increments, most probably watered down so we can make sure it has bipartisan support, and only if we think it wouldn't be such a dramatic jolt to the economy with unintended negative consequences, which it probably would. Complex, muddled, no clear action steps, requires a whole lot of follow-up reading and questioning, definitely would not fit in a single tweet. In this era of COVID and Trumpism and insurrection, I don't need to convince you of what you already know, that the current political climate and the high stakes of this national moment have polarized us into ideological bubbles whose edges grow a little more hardened by the minute. You know this, you've seen this, and perhaps you've mourned this, or perhaps you've celebrated it. And this leads us into what is, for me, the single most difficult question I have grappled with in my Unitarian Universalist faith life. How do we make room in our community for those whose beliefs are just so noxious to everything we stand for, and which seem at times so very demonstrably wrong? I mean, just how big a tent of compassion are we supposed to build? In recent months, few things have messed with my mind more than the story of Christine Priola. Like me, Christine worked in education. She provided occupational therapy to special needs children of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District before she quit her job in January of this year. In her resignation letter, she voiced her new intent to dedicate her life to fighting child sex trafficking and pedophilia in government agencies, an echoing of a baseless QAnon conspiracy theory, as well as a refusal to submit to the COVID vaccine being mandated for in-person teachers. And armed with the righteousness of her convictions, she entered the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th as part of a violent mob bent on insurrection and propelled forward by what is now known as the Big Lie. Why does Christine haunt my mind? Perhaps because I, too, have been arrested for my convictions. I, too, have a police record, I too have wrestled with the question of what I'd be willing to give up: my job, my freedom, my life, in exchange for standing up for my sincerely held beliefs and my convictions and the righteousness of my convictions. The idea that I'm forced to share this lofty moral high ground with someone whose beliefs I find so distasteful and harmful and wrong, it just sucks. Christine may be so misguided as to actually be insane, but the fact remains she lives her life with as much principle and bravery as I aspire to, even if she is dead wrong. Back to that question then, as dangerous misinformation proliferates in our society, just how big of a tent of compassion are we really supposed to build for these people? I think I know the answer, but oh, how I struggle with it. Because after careful thought, friends, I think our tent of compassion is supposed to be quite big. And while so many of us in this room, or in this virtual room, find no difficulty in loving the downtrodden and the oppressed, where our compassion often falters, where our growing edge is with the folks over there in the other ideological bubble. I am sorry to tell you that it is your moral imperative to keep these folks under your tent of compassion, but in my heart of hearts, I believe that is the case. For one thing, our compassion offers a bridge back to society for those who have taken refuge in misinformation and conspiracy theories over the past few years. And for another, to quote the old wisdom, "There but for the grace of God go I." Now, if you are alive and listening to me, I can safely conclude that you have never tried to drink bleach, which in turn is perhaps a good indicator that you believe in a lot of right as opposed to wrong things. If only someone would hand you or I the key to the government for one day, I'm sure we'd be out of this mess. But let's sit with our righteous confidence for a moment. Everything that has happened over the past couple years has dramatically altered our own sense of truth and certainty on a grand scale. To have Twitter or Facebook in the age of COVID-19 is to be constantly subject to the musings of amateur epidemiologists, experts on social distancing who never knew the term social distancing before last year, and a whole lot of armchair bureaucrats who are quite sure that if given the chance, they could coordinate a much better government response than we're seeing. And yet, alongside the certainty of our opinions on how we should be navigating this tragedy, a creeping uncertainty, at times, sometimes even akin to panic, is rising to the surface. As the activities of daily life are yet again shut down, how many of us will suffer financially in the cascading effects of this crisis? Lose our jobs, lose our childcare, find ourselves unable to find a hospital bed if we need one, find ourselves unable to pay for one. When the smoke finally clears and the enhanced benefit programs at last expire, what changes, if any, will this prompt our government to make in order to shore up our social safety nets that were found so severely lacking over the last year? In an era where we've weathered so many disappointments from our political leaders, can we count on their response to be rooted in humanity? And can we even count on that for ourselves? If things get worse, might we react in ways that would be unrecognizable to our present selves and to our sense of ourselves as a moral people? It makes the head hurt and the heart hurt to live with such deep uncertainty. In a sense, our clamoring for a strong crackdown on misinformation, a 100% vaccination rate, a flawless school reopening plan, our need to have our own opinion on the right way forward, affirmed by our community as the truth, is just a need for certainty. In pursuing this certainty, how grateful we can be that we are blessed with the faculties of reason, of rationality, of contemplation. And yet, yes, we can use these qualities to increase our rightness and increase our certainty, but again, think of Clive and his journal. His virus may have robbed him of reason, rationality, and contemplation, but doesn't he still know himself to be just as right and certain as we know ourselves to be? These reasonable faculties we prize aren't important because they make us right. They are important because they allow us the grace to be wrong. Here's what I propose. It is not the attainment of truth or of certainty, as attractive of an idea as that may be for UUs. Truth is a big, messy, tricky, and elusive beast. What I propose is simply space. A space next to and surrounding our beliefs that gives them more room to grow, to expand, to twist and turn and be tested, and, if it comes to this, to change. Or a space to simply be that. Space. A void, a question mark, an ambiguity. A strange little presence in our life, existing, not contributing much to the discourse except, here I am, just gotta live with me for a while. It would be wonderful if we always knew the truth and the certain way forward in a timely fashion, but sometimes we just don't. So now, think of your most cherished, educated, sincerely held belief. How much space have you left for this belief to evolve? And even if your most sincerely held belief will not be changing, which is fair, is there at least a softness to its edges, a slight blurring of the silhouette, an invitation to think, okay, I know I'm not wrong, but maybe I can see with some compassion why others may believe I am. The virus we're dealing with today won't rob us of our reasoning faculties the way that Clive was robbed of his. But I hardly need belabor the point to warn you that reason and rationality do not always coexist peacefully with fear and anxiety. But at the same time, this moment is dynamic, one of unprecedented upheaval that may very well lead to the crumbling of old values and the structures and the rise of better ones. When this virus clears, as it someday will, we will be a city of 400,000, a nation of 350 million, and a world of 7 billion, deciding how best to rebuild what we've lost or what not to rebuild at all. And if one thing is certain, it is that we will not all be on the same page. As we all clamor to chart the best path forward, the great skills of making space to be wrong and space to be uncertain may end up serving us very well. Of course, I could be wrong. In 4 days' time, I will have finished my 4th decade on this planet. And I am very proud to say that each year I have found that I am certain of a few less things than I was the year before. At this rate, if all goes well, I will have achieved perfect ignorance by the time I reach my deathbed. I will have become F. Scott Fitzgerald's rudderless young hero, Amory Blaine, who stretches his arms to the sky and declares, "I know myself, but that is all." Our benediction today comes from the Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron. It's daring not to shut out anyone out of our hearts, not to make anyone an enemy. If we begin to live like this, we find that we actually can't define someone as completely right or completely wrong anymore. Life is more slippery and playful than that. Our ancient habitual patterns will begin to soften, and we'll begin to see the faces and hear the words of people who are talking to us. As we learn to have compassion for ourselves, the circle of compassion, what and whom we can work with and how, expands.
We should definitely thank Kelly Colpett for her music today. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. This ends today's service of worth giving and worship. We hope you found something that ministered to you, and we hope that you'll choose to add your strength to ours in coming Sundays. Be well.